to the Chattanooga Community Housing Development Organization, CCHDO, to construct a single-family house located at 198 North Willow Street for affordable home ownership.
Any questions or comments? If not, D, please.
A resolution to rescind resolution number 30611 due to owner developer deciding to rehab and sell the unit, thereby forfeiting the $20,000 award of home program funding to develop affordable rental housing.
All right, seeing no lights, E.
A resolution authorizing the administrator of community development to award $127,086 in whole program funds to the Chattanooga Community Housing Development Organization, CCHDO, to construct a single-family house located at 200 North Willow Street for affordable home ownership.
Councilwoman Hill.
Thank you, Chair. These three items and then the following caught my attention alongside the agenda item for next week, which also relates to rehabilitating to affordable rental units. I've reached out to Mr. Salmons, and this may be in keeping with my question about our homelessness strategy, but I'm interested to have a better understanding of what the Kelly administration's strategy is going to be around affordable housing, what sort of framework we're using to determine what projects we're funding, what benchmarks and things we're measuring to know, okay, well, we've spent $116K on an affordable single family house. Where does that get us toward where we want to go? So.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. We can cover that at some of the presentation that's coming up in September. I also think it would be worth potentially scheduling a separate discussion around affordable housing generally, because there is an overlap in that Venn diagram, but there's also a whole range of other issues around some of our strategies around land banking, community land trusts, some of the other policy initiatives around density that we're also looking at. So I'm happy to put together a presentation and see if we can find a date for that, if that works for you,
Okay.
Councilwoman.
Thank you. Yeah, sometime in October, perhaps we could look at that. Just, I agree, it should be a separate session from our homelessness strategy session.
Perfect. Thank you so
you.
much.
All right, you good?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, I believe that was E. F, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator of community development to transfer project ownership from American Lotus LLC to 2545 Macaulay LLC, Peter Nikic, via an assignment and assumption agreement, which contains a home program assisted duplex located at 2545 Macaulay Avenue, tax map number 146 KV 017, lot number 11.
All right, I'm not seeing any hands. We're moving into finance. G, please.
A resolution authorizing the interim city treasurer to award commercial and general banking services to First Horizon Bank, including lockbox services, payroll cards, safekeeping and custodial accounts, and for the collection of sewer fees, property taxes, and water quality fees at branch locations for a 4-year contract for an annual amount not to exceed $85,000 of $340,000 for the total contract period.
All right. H.
A resolution authorized the interim city treasurer to award commercial and general banking services to Truist Bank, including purchasing cars, safekeeping, and custodial accounts for a 4-year contract of an annual amount not to exceed $30,500 or $121,800 for the total contract period.
Move it into human resources. I.
A resolution authorizing the interim chief human resources officer to exercise the second of 2 renewal options with Industrial Organizational Solutions, IO Solutions, through May 2022 for a total amount not to exceed $87,940.
Still seeing no hands. And J was covered last week in Public Works, Parks and Public Works Committee. Are there any questions or comments concerning J? If not, council, do you have any questions concerning the purchase items on this week's agenda? Looks like we have about a total of 6 purchase items this afternoon. I'm not seeing any hands. Therefore, we'll move to the August 10th agenda, next week's agenda. Any questions or comments concerning next week's agenda? Councilwoman Hill.
I have two questions. The first is the ordinance first reading number 6B, ordinance to amend the Chattanooga City Code Part 2 related to speed through streets. I know that a couple months back, before I was on the council, that we changed some speed limits, and I want to understand why these speed limits are being changed.
Okay, you want to, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last, you want to understand what now?
So this is a ordinance to change some speed limits
That's-
around the airport, and I want to understand the bigger why of
Okay,
this.
okay.
Yes, Councilwoman. This includes speed limit changes for two streets. One is Shepherd Road. And that's actually to correct the speed limit that was set. There was an error in setting that speed limit when it was done last. So we're correcting that to lower it, correct? Yeah, to
Mhm.
lower it. And the second one is a speed limit change on Washington Street, which occurs in conjunction with some restriping that was recently completed to change how traffic flows through that area.
Okay. The airport connector road is going down 10 miles an hour as well. So, I mean, I understand what the numbers are, but my question is the bigger why of why we're doing these. So like Hicks and Pike was slowed down
Eric.
because of safety.
So the project that was completed on Shepherd Road that added some additional sidewalks, street trees, and changed the lane configuration there. The speed limit was changed or intended to be changed a few months ago. At that time, you had acknowledged in response to that. When the design of the street is changed, we look at that as an opportunity to see if there are ways that we can change speed limits to better match the design of the street. So the Airport Connector Road and Shepherd Road, it's all, they abut one another. So it's all part of the same change in response to that city-led project that was completed.
To the redesign of the street. Okay, all right, thank you very much. My other question is also a public works question. It is item 7F. The resolution authorizing us to accept a donation from the Chattanooga Design Studio for the patent porch. In light of our public works staffing issues, this obviously raised a little concern for me. And I read the agreement, which says, no worries, we take no responsibility for maintenance of this. We're just going to let it rot. We will not replace any swings. We will not fix anything. And I just walked down there between meetings and doesn't look great. And I question, do we accept a $93,000 street installation that we have no intent or capability to maintain, that is, as it degrades, actually looks pretty awful?
So this was city funded project. So city funds were used to create all of this artwork through the design studio. And then we're accepting, the proposal is to accept those back from the design studio. We have had internal conversations with the Parks Maintenance Division as well as Public Works to talk about the maintenance that will be needed for these elements. There are a couple of questions open about especially the swings in particular, because we did have an issue with the swing at Miller Park that we had to basically correct some of the design on. So if it makes more sense for the council, we would be happy to defer this until we have more clear answers.
Right now there's first of all, it gets a great deal of use, which is wonderful. It definitely activates that street and adds some value to that street. There's a Adirondack chair that doesn't have an arm. Neither of the swings right there at Patton Parkway, not in Miller Park, but Patton Parkway, have or not Patton, sorry, Patton Towers, the corner right here in front of the bankruptcy court. Neither of them may actually even have a swing. It seems like a waste of money for us to spend. I mean, obviously the money has already been spent, but for us as a city to spend $93,278 with no intent to maintain what we put in, even if it was intended to be somewhat temporary. So it's y'all's call if you want to pull it, but if we're not going to maintain it, I'd like to think the Kelly administration won't come up with very many of these.
This was from the prior administration, but it is here for us to inherit, and we will
Yeah.
certainly determine if we need to. We can. I would say it'd make more sense maybe to defer until we have more answers around maintenance.
Okay. I would be more comfortable with that. I think the no maintenance plan is just disregarding our responsibility.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
agree.
Okay.
I think, and we don't have clear, solid answers on the maintenance plan. So if we defer a week, we can work that out.
Okay. All right. That'd be great. That's all my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Byrd.
Thank you. On H, resolution, under Public Works, Parks and Public Works, H, that should say District 8, not 9. So if we could change that.
District 8. Madam Clerk, can you make that notation? We'll get that changed on the agenda. Thank you.
And that's it.
Okay. Councilwoman Coonrod, question on next week's agenda.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm confused about F. Just want to make sure I'm understanding. It's a donation. So is it that we gonna be responsible for the upkeep or?
What item was that again?
F under part.
F.
In relation to Jenny's question, I kind of got confused with her questioning because it said it's a donation. So we're accepting something, right? And that's how much that it costs. So is it that we will be responsible for the upkeep, or this is just saying how much the donation is that we're accepting for the installment?
Yeah, that's the value of the donation. The biggest question is maintaining the elements, the
Just
art
maintaining.
elements.
Okay,
So we don't have any responsibility to maintain, any part of the building, but if we accept these as a city, as a donation, then we would have some responsibility for maintaining, or they would just sit there and decline
yeah,
over time. So we do need to work out some issues around maintenance.
okay, yeah, that's cool. Just wanted to make sure I was understanding. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions regarding next week's agenda, August the 10th? If not, we'll move to future considerations. Any questions regarding future considerations? Councilwoman Coonrod?
Jenny and I spoke about it earlier in case anybody else had any concerns about it. That Napon project, it just got set back a year because of COVID. And so they just asking if we could extend that one out on there. And
Which one is that again?
A, under economic development.
Economic
the
development.
Napon
Okay.
plant, yeah.
And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Did you have a specific question
No,
for?
I was just clarifying what it was in case any other council member had any questions about it. Jenny and I spoke about it earlier.
Okay.
And so just to give the council a little bit of background, thank you, Councilwoman Coonrod. The Napon facility will be built in phases. So this gives them a chance to make sure that the final phase is built on time and in compliance. In exchange for that, we also asked, because the city is required to build an extension of Hardy Street as part of this agreement. So this also gives us an extra year to extend Hardy Street. So they will have additional time to build out the final phase. and we will have additional time to build out an extension of the road.
All right, and then my second question, and Jenny and I spoke about this as well. C, is there any city-owned property that we could utilize for the IT department rather than leasing out the Etny space?
Well, there is not currently any city-owned property that we have that would be ready for the IT department to move directly into. So because of the fact that the IT department, has now been housed in the Etny building for a few years at this point, all of their equipment is there, so it would require a significant move. So that's not to say that, that we couldn't start to look at that for the future. But for right now, no, there's not space that we could move the IT department into.
Okay. And then Chair, if I may, just one more question under the community development A. Of those, the CDBG dollars that are going to the housing authority, is that to help with housing, or is it completing any phase of their projects of rehabilitating the stock that they currently have? What would that money be used for?
Let me defer to Tony on that one.
Okay.
Excuse me, Councilwoman, could you repeat your question?
The CDBG dollars that are going to the housing authority, what exactly would that funding be used for? Is it going for their continued rehabbing projects with the stock that they have, or is it going to additional affordable housing?
That, if I'm correct, those dollars are previously allocated dollars. We're having to renew the contract so they can complete that project. Those dollars were being utilized for the Cromwell project.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, you good, Councilwoman? All right. Any other questions regarding future considerations? If not, we'll move to our department report. Administrative budget process spending and transparency. Chief, is that you this afternoon?
Mr. Chairman, we don't have a report this week.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
That should, just to know that, we don't need that to be on the agenda going forward unless you all want us. to.
Okay. All right, very well. Madam Clerk, you make a note of going forward. We won't need that item on there anymore. All right, I think Councilwoman Coonrod, question on,
On the jumping hill, Chip, before we got onto the report.
oh, okay, future
Uh,
considerations.
Yeah, I just noticed one more question that I have under the police, public safety. I would like to know as far what it says that you will be getting, equipment and paying for training. What kind of equipment will you be purchasing, and what does that training consist of? Because, since the protest, we had a lot of ask of, our police department, like, sensitivity training and ongoing like that. Would that include some of that training?
The JAG grant is a grant that allows police departments to obtain equipment that would not necessarily be budgeted.
Okay.
So it is various types. It's maybe a camera or different types of equipment that can be used in the field.
Mhm.
The training, I think they had allowed some for investigations and
Mhm.
some training for resources for our community and departmental services.
Okay, so there's nothing included as far as cultural awareness or training, sensitivity training? anything like
Not
that?
in the particular JAG
this-
grant.
okay.
It's not. No,
All right. Thank you.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, thanks.
All right, you good now? All right. Having covered all agenda items for this afternoon, I will now hand the chair over to Councilman Ledford for Planning and Zoning Committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Planning and Zoning Committee for Tuesday, August 3rd. If I can get a motion for our minutes. Thank you very much. Without objections, the minutes will stand. We have ordinances on final reading. Items D and E, which we already had first reading on last week. So unless there's any questions, Council or Dr. Burr, she's not in here. We have conditions that we went over and I believe they are solid. We do have the C3 text amendment, new tool. Karen, we're good on that
Yes,
with the
sir.
alternate version and the added flexibility?
Yes.
Okay, so seeing no lights, we're going to go ahead and bypass D and E as they are on final reading. Next week, August 10th, ordinances on first reading under planning. Karen, we're going to run through these quickly.
Okay.
And I will turn them over to you. Item C, please.
Okay. And if I could get the PDF presentation that's in the Google Drive, should have today's date on it. And are you all able to hear me okay with my mask on? Or,
I'm good.
okay. Would you like me to start while it warms up?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. I
think the presentation.
The first case is a rezoning request for rezoning on Murray Hills Drive. It's at Murray Hills Drive. There's two properties. They're both have a portion of them zoned C2 commercial, and they're requesting rezoning of the remaining portions of the two properties for a self-storage facility at 1.34 acres. This is across from a church on Murray Hills Drive, just north of Oak Hill Drive. A portion of the, and I'll be speaking of kind of them as two properties to help inform the recommendation. One is that's probably about 2/3 of its zone C2. The other has just a small portion zone C2, zone C2. A request for with rezoning to C2 was withdrawn in 2003, but the other C2 remaining strip is part of the commercial development along all of Highway 58. This is about a block off Highway 58. The property is across from a church. The plan recommends for the property closer to Highway 58, a community commercial type development, which is a retail higher intensity development. For the property a little bit farther to the west in the residential, that's R1 residential, is recommended low density residential. Staff found that the self-storage facility is a reasonable use for the property that's already zoned primarily C2. And however, the property isn't, the rezoning is not compatible with for the property that's primarily R1 further to the west. Expanding the C2 zone would set a precedent for future requests. So staff recommended approving only the property closest to Highway 58 with a building height limitation. There was opposition. There was an email opposition at Planning Commission concerned about commercial encroachment, increased traffic. Planning Commission did find that the request for rezoning both the properties is compatible with the plan and has 4 conditions recommended. That is a 25-foot landscape buffer along the abutting R1, mini warehouse use only, curb cut, ingress and egress to be excluded from Lot 5, meaning that property closest to Highway 58, and limited to 1 story in height. But there was, I think we only had the email opposition.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
I know it's hard
Thank
to
you, Dr. Bird.
follow along with a mental picture, and there should
So-
be a PDF with today's date on it.
I think Mr. IT is working on that, but we are, I know Vice Chairman Smith is ready to comment on that, so we will move with him next. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Karen, I've heard from a number of people as well, but at this time, I think you've answered most of my initial questions as far as how this case was heard and how it was voted on. I would like a copy of the email opposition that was received. If you
Okay.
would please make a note of that.
Yes.
And send it to me. I've got a number. I'm actually surprised you were not flooded with opposition over this, as I have been. So it is not highly desirable as the entrance to this neighborhood to have it there. But at this time, I don't have anything further for you specifically about this project. So it is not highly desirable as the entrance to this neighborhood to have it there. But at this time, I don't have anything further for
Should I
you
just keep going
specifically
and keep
about this
listening to me
project.
over and over again?
So, it is not.
We're going to go ahead and adjourn this.
It is not highly desirable as the entrance to this neighborhood to have it there. But at this time, I don't have anything further for
Should I
you
just keep going and keep
specifically about this
listening to me
project.
over and over
So,
again?
it is not.
We're going to go ahead and adjourn this.
It is not highly desirable as the entrance to this neighborhood to have it there. But at this time, I don't have anything for
Should I
you
just keep going
specifically
and
about
keep
this
listening to me
project.
over and over again?
So, it is not.
We're going to go ahead and adjourn this.
It is not highly desirable.
I can't see Brent's face. I really wish I could.
To have it there.
I
But
really
at this
wish I
time,
could see your
I
face.
don't have
Promise I did not.
for
Should I
you
just keep going and keep listening to me over and over again?
So, it is not.
We're going to go ahead and adjourn this.
It is not highly desirable.
I can't see Brent's face. I really wish I could.
To have it there.
I really wish I could see your face.
Promise I
I
did
bet you there's one around.
Listening to me over and over again. It is not.
Go ahead and adjourn. Well, so much for efficiency, Karen. I can't see Brent's face. I really wish I could.
To have it there.
I really wish I could see your face. I bet you there's one around. So what are we waiting on? Something to stop. So much for efficiency, Karen. I can't see Brent's face. I really wish I could.
To have it there.
Turning it off. would be-
I really wish I could. I bet you there's one around. So what are we waiting on? Something to stop. So much for efficiency.
Close to this C2, to the side is the C2 property to the south shown there. Somehow have lost the magic. Okay. Both properties were annexed in the city of Chattanooga with their zoning shown. The plan recommends the North River, Hickson North River Plan recommends a medium business mix for the property fronting Hickson Pike and a lower density residential mix for the property that fronts on Eagle Drive. And that medium business mix is classified as convenience, commercial, neighborhood, office type uses. The request, staff determined the request is compatible with the adopted plan, adjacent land uses and development form, but in order to protect the adjacent single-family residential dwellings, recommend approving the C2 zone with conditions restricting out some of those more intense commercial uses, and those being late night event facilities, nightclubs, and adult-oriented establishments. There was substantial opposition at Planning Commission, concerns related to ability to see the retail, noise, additional traffic. Planning Commission did find that the request is compatible with the plan, adjacent land uses and development form, and added on some additional recommendations, keeping the late night event facility, nightclub, adult or establishment prohibition. Along the rear of the proposed building, installing an 8-foot tall wooden privacy fence, and along the shared property line with a Chippenham Drive, that's part of the Ramsgate subdivision property, maintaining a minimum of 5 feet in depth of the existing vegetation. This is the site. Eagle Drive is there to the right, Hickson Pike to the bottom of the screen. And just note the site plan, the C2 zone to the south of this property is shown incorporated into their site plan with the area in blue, that portion that is actually part of the rezoning request.
Very good. Thank you. Vice Chairman.
Just a few questions, Karen, and you may not know the answer to this, may be something that I do need to discuss with the developer, but this particular view is one of them. The 44 feet that was to be zoned R1 looks like that is still part of this development. Does that include I guess the trees that we're seeing on the site plan that they would be planting? So they would clear all of the trees that are currently there and then add these back? Or is the buffer, the little bit of buffer that we're seeing on this particular image, is that the 44 feet? The R1 will remain untouched? Do you know the answer to that?
I think it might be a two-part question. Perhaps one is for the applicant and their intention, and the other, and we can confirm, will the city enforce the buffer between the C2 and the R1? Although it's the same development, will they enforce that buffer? And I don't have the answer for that, but I will have that for the next meeting. I don't know, having said that, what the intention is of the applicant based on the site plan.
Okay. I expected as much. The other question is also, when you leave Hickson Pike on Eagle Drive, it's rather it's a bit of a steep drop off from Hickson Pike to Eagle Drive. And then as you get down to where that house was that we just zipped right past, it's about a 12-inch drop per 40 feet. So there's a substantial amount of flooding that this entire street has that leaves from Hickson Pike and heads north just due to that slope. So because all these trees are down below street level, and based on the site plan, my expectation or understanding would be that they would raise this entire area to do the development? Or do you know if they plan on leaving it lower than Hickson Pike and having going into the drive being the slope?
Don't remember any discussion at Planning Commission related to that or any information volunteered. So that would be a question for the applicant.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel the rest of my questions are probably going to go. So at this point, Mr. Chair, I really don't have any further questions for Ms. Rennick, but I do have quite a few for
Mr. Berry.
the applicants at this time. So hopefully I will hear. Do you also have a list of opposition? Do you have any emails that went along? I've got a lot myself, but if there were any additional included, I would love to see those just to make sure that I'm communicating with everybody that did express opposition in writing that may not have reached out to me.
We'll provide that in the email of everyone who's contacted us for opposition or came to the meeting.
That would be great. And if you communicate with Mr. Barry after this point, would you make sure to reiterate to him that I highly recommend that he reach out to me if he would like this development to move forward?
I will. Yes, we'll do that after this meeting.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. All right, Karen, let's move on to item E, please.
Okay, just down the street is a request to rezone property from R1 to R3 residential zone. It's for a multifamily apartment complex for 11 acres, 180 units. This is fronting on Hickson Pike, Big Ridge, heading up Big Ridge to Fairview Road is to the right. Cassandra Smith Road is just to the left. So we'll be addressing or commenting on the apartment complex to the south, which is under construction on this aerial photo. The property is zoned R1. This is a portion of the lots. You'll see that they extend up towards Big Ridge Road. There's I believe 5 or 6 acres there that are not part of this zoning request that will remain R1. The property to the south, that area we just looked at that was under construction, was rezoned to R3 in 2017, subject to a series of conditions related to density and buffering. The Hickson plan has a 2-part recommendation for the site. For the portion of the property that is closer to Hickson Pike, the plan recommends a medium density residential use, which includes 1 to 2, 3, 4 family dwellings. And then, excuse me, that's for the portion a little bit off Hickson Pike. The closer to Hickson Pike is the light business mix, which has the neighborhood commercial office, it's limited residential. The plan does have a goal for consolidating curb cuts, so staff just recommended the applicant consider joint access to the adjacent multifamily development. It is an area of slope heading up Big Ridge. The staff recommendation found that the proposal is compatible with the plan, adjacent land uses and development form. This is an extension of an existing zone. And then in order to protect the single family dwellings in the area, staff recommended 2 conditions. One is a buffer condition and the other was related to clearing or grading. At Planning Commission, we uncovered that buffer condition is actually less than actually required by the standard. So that is not desired. And then the applicant at the meeting stated that they would need to consider using some of that space for clearing or grading. So there was not opposition at Planning Commission. And with that discussion, Planning Commission found the request is compatible with the plan, adjacent land uses and development form, and they recommended approval. So that's approval, a recommendation for approval for R3 with no conditions.
Very good. Vice Chairman.
You mentioned that there's a portion of this development that is not, or not this development, a portion of the property that is not being requested to be rezoned.
Correct.
And is that, all right, so that's Big Ridge Road up there all the way to the right, correct?
That's correct. In the blue on the bottom section, the blue area is the rezoning. And then the area to the white, in the white that says remaining R1, I think one is like 1.3 acres and the other sections like maybe, so that is the area that's not part of this request. So that essentially leaves that area heading up to Fairview is undeveloped, but not as R3.
Okay, and I see here where it says reserved green space area. I love that. But my question is there anything requiring them to leave that as reserved green space area? Or are they, because it's zoned R1, we're just going to take their word for it that they're not going to cut it and put in housing or something like that?
So the area shown in dark green that's not part of the request is that we would not, I don't know what the intention is. It was not reviewed as part of the request. The area shown in light green was what the condition was, the staff condition was attempting to get to, but the applicant stated that they would possibly need to grade in that area. And Planning Commission did mention the new vegetative standards as a possible way to address that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Seeing no other lights, Karen, let's move on to item F, please.
Okay. This is a request for the southwest corner of the intersection of Standifer Gap and Jenkins Road for a C2, R1 to C2 rezoning for a convenience store with gas pumps for 1.5 acres of property. Jenkins Road is extending north to its intersection with 75 there. The area shown is to the south of Standifer Gap is primarily residential in this area. There is R1 zoning. The darker brown is kind of attached RT townhouse attached zoning, and the area shown in orange is a county zone, a low density residential county zone. There's been no recent rezoning history for the site. I'm going to do a series. So this is a recommendation coming from staff and Planning Commission to deny. So I'm going to set that up by just going through a couple of recent rezonings. Property located at 7737 Standifer Gap. It actually primarily fronts on Jenkins, was rezoned to R4 with some conditions related to parking, street yard buffering. And then I've got a couple here, sorry. It's a hair trigger. We've got 3 properties along Jenkins Road, and I'm not going to read these, but this one was rezoned to C2 with conditions related to dumpster and stormwater placement, no drive-throughs, and signage restrictions. The site's shown there, marked with the site and the arrow pointing to the property that we're discussing. Moving south, this is a Standifer Gap address, but it's actually the property fronting on Jenkins. Again, talked about no dumpsters or structures near the residential zone. Following uses were prohibited, including gas stations, drive-throughs, has a maximum building height and a signage limitation also. And I think I've missed one in there, I apologize. And then, yes, and then one more on Jenkins, and this is on the east side of Jenkins, no drive-through services, limiting uses and limiting building height. So there is a history of some usage limitations in this area.
Perfect. Thanks, Karen. This is in District 4, and I concur with the denial recommendation by Planning Commission and staff. And as far as opposition, I think I heard from everybody in East Hamilton, East Brainerd, Cleveland, and Georgia on this one. So I think I know where I'm going. So thank you, Karen.
And I'd like to note that the applicant was not present at Planning Commission.
Correct.
But staff did not find that this was compatible with the area.
Thank you. Item G, please.
Okay, this is a request to rezone 9 acres from C2 convenience commercial to the UGC urban general commercial zone. And this is the old former East Brainerd Elementary School site. So it's for a mixed use multi-family project, and the number of residential uses proposed is 250. This is at the intersection of Joyner and East Brainerd Road. North Joyner is running to the north, East Brainerd Road to the south, and then about 1 block east of Gun Barrel. The building is no longer there. The property was rezoned to C2 in 2016 with a series of conditions related to traffic, prohibition on late night event facilities, nightclubs, oil change operations, and similar uses, limiting dumpster service, outdoor speakers, and directing lighting away from residential areas. And this was intending to address compatibility. There's single family residents along North Joyner, commercial along Gun Barrel, and then to the corner of just across from the site, across North Joyner from the site, there are 2 commercial uses right there. One of those is a car wash. The Hamilton Place plan had recommended this site stay institutional, and that was, of course, when East Brainerd Elementary School was still active. And just to let you know, we no longer use institutional as a land use recommendation for the most part because it, when that institution leaves, it doesn't leave much of a recommendation. But the property precedent was set for this being a commercial use with the rezoning to C2 in 2016. So there was, as it says opposition, really, I think it was more of a question at Planning Commission to planning commissioners in general, or a question about what is the plan, or just concerns about the access point at East Brainerd and North Joyner. And just interested if there was going to be a traffic light, and just expressing concerns about that. The Planning Commission did find that the rezoning in C2 set, in 2016 set a precedent, and the urban general commercial zone was appropriate with the following conditions. These are the same as staff, that commercial uses be limited to 330 feet from East Brainerd and a building height of 2.5 stories or 35 feet. And just to let you know how we got there, this is the applicant site plan, and the arrow is pointing to where the commercial extends already along North Joyner Road. So that's kind of the edge of the car wash is 300 feet. And so the intention was the UGC could have those commercial uses 330 feet. So just a little bit back from that point, but also intending to reflect the site plan with those residential uses along to the rear of the property. Some pictures of the site. Well, the school has been removed, and just show you that applicant did provide just some, this is a different type of project for the East Brainerd area. This is not a UGC in this general location. And so applicant provided some materials.
Thank you, Karen. So this site is actually very special because we had a complete wide open when we had conditions on a C2 piece of property that could have been, I think, something that the community would not have been very happy with. So when the applicant or the property owner came to me, they said, what do you want to see here? I said, I would like to see mixed use. I'd like to see walkability. I'd like to see single family homes also meeting the demand with apartments that I know are needed and the density in that area closer into the gun barrel. But I'd like to see commercial property or retail up against the road. That's where UGC came in. And this is the first introduction of UGC to the District 4 area. And I think it works. And I think that staff was very helpful in helping to bring about UGC in this fashion. We have townhomes, we have extra green space, and we have improvements to North Joyner Road in front of that development that I'll be working with the administration on the rest of that, moving down to Ziegler. So I think this is something that we should have been doing a long time ago in East Brainerd, moving our parking to the interior. If you look at some of the other retail developments in this area, I wish we would have done this a heck of a long time ago. And we have I just think this is a really good plan, and I'm glad that we were bold enough to ask for it and move out of that C2 and move into UGC with this introduction. And I plan on trying to use this in the future for other developments and hopefully raise the stakes out there. So I'm seeing no other lights on this, Karen. So we are going to move on to item H, please. Thank you for that presentation.
This is a little bit farther down East Brainerd Road, heading east. A request to rezone property that's R1 and R2 to O1 office and RTZ residential townhouse 0 lot line zone for a medical office and single family dwellings. It's about 1.7 acres with 5 dwelling units proposed. Just to orient you, Graceville Road is heading southbound. The neighborhood Walmart is shown there to the west. This is one property. It has a split zone with the R2 is shown, and then the R1, the way the applicant would like to divide the property is shown there with the O1 fronting East Brainerd, and then that is Kinsey Drive. So accessing the townhouse property off Kinsey Drive. That's C2 is shown in red, so surrounded by C2 to the south, east, and west. There's been no recent rezoning history. There was a 2012 rezoning for commercial property east, and then south of East Brainerd Road, there's a C5 property fronting it, and then we had some other associated zonings also in 2012. The East Brainerd Corridor Community Plan has a recommendation for neighborhood commercial use for that R2 property that fronts on East Brainerd Road. And that talks about a medium intensity uses, compatible and complementary to residential properties. And then heading down Kinsey Drive, it's a recommendation for low density residential, single family dwellings with a density of 5 dwelling units an acre. Staff recommendation found that the proposal for the O1 and the RTZ was compatible with the adopted land use plan, land uses and development form. But in order to meet the goal of that low density residential for the northern portion of Kinsey Drive, we had a recommendation that there be no more than 5 single family detached residential dwellings for the RTZ portion. There was opposition at Planning Commission. Concerns about quality of life, children's safety, and home values were expressed. Planning Commission did find also, though, that request was compatible with the plan, land uses and development form, and approved with the same condition that staff had recommended, with the no more than 5 single-family detached residential dwellings. And just showing the site.
Thanks, Karen. This is in District 4 and just down the street from my house. I pass this every single day. And kind of in conjunction, if you'll go back to that overall showing that C2 next door. Thank you. So in working with the property owner, first of all, R2 on East Brainerd Road is probably not the best idea, and it would be very difficult and considered a nuisance to whoever tried to live there. So office made perfect sense with this moving down to the single family homes. We already had R1. We're limiting it to 5. Under the current zoning, we could have more residential structures than what is actually there now. So I think this was a great alternative, and I appreciate the applicant working with me to figure out how to put an office in that commercial corridor. And I will probably go ahead and drop this next, that we will probably see residential on that C2 next door to it, which is something I'm working on right now as an additional component, because I'm very worried about that C2 and that commercial corridor and the widening of East Brainerd Road. I'd like to keep that commercial or residential, strike that, residential. So we're working with that. So this is part of a holistic approach to that corner and that piece of property that's been vacant for a very long time. And I think that we're working towards bringing about the residential component we need and not adding additional commercial in that corridor. So thanks for that presentation, and we'll move on to item I.
Okay, this is a request to rezone property that's M1 and C2 to M1 manufacturing zone. The proposed use is a stone fabrication shop for about 4.5 acres with frontage on Hunter Road and Hilltop Drive. Just to orient you, I-75 is running southbound. Miller Industries is to your west. Hunter Road is heading to the northwest, and then Hilltop Drive runs parallel to I-75 at this location. There is a bit of a mix of zoning here. It's primarily commercial and manufacturing to the west along Hilltop. Then to across is Hunter Road, there's C2 zone property. And then as you move north on Hunter, that transitions to an R1 lower density residential. So the two properties that we're talking about, so one of them, it's a combined project, but there one property fronts on Hunter as mentioned and one on Hilltop. Both of them were rezoned while they were in the county. And then when they were annexed into the city, they were zoned C2 and M1 as part of that permanent zoning process. Property to the west of the site was zoned M2 in 2002, and the Miller Industry Expansion Site was rezoned to M1 in 2016. And that's that larger M1 piece with that last arrow pointing to the north. The industrial commercial office uses to the west. There's a single family house still remaining in a billboard to the east, although I believe that is zone commercial, and then vacant property to the north of the site. This area is in the comprehensive plan, meaning that we defer to the comprehensive plan when there's not an adopted land use plan for the area. The area is level 4, which is a close proximity to major intersections and intersection of major roads with the potential for a moderate to high potential for infill. And the level 1 are areas that are more environmentally significant. And I believe that's reflecting the slopes on the site. Staff found that the proposal is compatible with this case, the comprehensive plan and adjacent land uses and development form, and recommended approval. There was no opposition at Planning Commission. Planning Commission recommendation, findings and recommendation mirrored those of staff with a recommendation to approve.
Very good. Thank you, Karen. Dr. Burrs?
Yeah. So I haven't heard anything from the developer. And I'd like to know, do we know what he's going to develop is going to look like?
We'll turn to his site plan, and I will remind all council members, we always encourage the applicant multiple times to speak to speak to their council members. I'm getting to the site plan was what was provided. And
go back a minute, Karen, to that. What is
this?
Okay.
Is west, excuse me, I'm sorry, the hair trigger. This is west of the site on Hunter Road. This is an existing business.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
And then this is south of the site, and this is on Hilltop.
Okay, so here are my questions. These are big swaths of land that are kind of taken off the map for any housing that could develop there. And that's my concern. I don't mind business and housing coexisting with each other. My concern is that if we start taking these big, that's 4 acres. I'm kind of familiar with that area, and I know that there are plans to look at that as a good area to develop housing and affordable housing. And we're kind of, I know it looks pretty rough now, but the bottom line is, are we putting like a factory there that would obviate anything else housing wise being developed in the area?
So I think just 2 points I'll note that a portion of the site's already zoned manufacturing. And it's the frontage that runs along Hilltop, and I don't know how deep that is. So there is already manufacturing zone property, and it is C2, but you're correct in that with no conditions, it doesn't address the scale.
Right.
The scale will be addressed by the standards of it. The most of Hilltop Drive is zone manufacturing, particularly with the Miller properties. And I don't believe they've used that expansion land, but as you know, that was a big project a while ago. So, and then if this essentially fronts on I-75 also, there is not a lot of buffer there. So I think with the commercial zone in place, that the property already does have a swath of manufacturing along its frontage, particularly that Hilltop Drive.
Does this property front the freeway?
It fronts Hilltop, but there's not a lot of buffer between Hilltop and the freeway. So I'd say there is, in my opinion, pretty visible.
Okay, my only concern is that number one, we don't know what they're building there. And I think because it's on the freeway And for future stuff, there ought to be something, some idea of what they're doing there. And the fact that it's already zoned, we kind of inherited that from the county, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of good land back in there that I don't want to kill with cruddy looking development that we put no conditions on at all. What's your suggestion?
Well, the applicant is doing a stone fabrication, and based on their name of their business, Outlook Masonry, I've assumed that's in line. The applicant did not go into great detail at Planning Commission on what that would look like or how the outdoor space would be used. So I cannot answer that, but there are no conditions other than what would be part of the existing standards to address that. So the site plan does have some detail, but not probably to the extent that you're requesting information. So I would defer to the applicant on additional plans and how they're using the entirety of the site.
So it got approved for the applicant using existing stuff, right? It got approved. Nobody thought too much about it. They said, sure, yeah, it meets this. We're not putting any conditions on it, anything like that. Was there any talk of long-range thinking? Like there's land around there that could be developed for some of the housing we need? Was there any future thinking at all?
We did not discuss that. And normally we would defer to the area plan to give us guidance because we don't have an area plan for
There
this
isn't
area.
one.
We don't have that additional guidance. So
Okay.
the most of the discussion was the fact that Hilltop Drive is primarily manufacturing and commercial, and we deferred to that as our
Okay.
discussion.
So here's what I'd like to do. I think I don't want to, that's 4 acres, and I think I don't want to kill a whole area because we don't have any rules and regs about how, because we need land for housing and affordable housing and this sort of thing. So number one, I would like to know, get some idea of what this thing is going to look like. I understand stone fab, but they're making false stone, right?
I can't answer that. I'm not sure how they're using it, and I don't know what products they have on the site or how they
Okay.
store them.
So I think we need to think about that. We need to think about how are they filtering their air system? I mean, there's much more than just sure, okay. And I've got to admit that I'm ignorant as to what it seems to me that the old requirements, there weren't any requirements. It was in the county. So what I need is what would be the optimal conditions to put on these people so that they don't kill. That land around there is beautiful and developable, and we're short of land. Everybody knows that. And I think more needs to happen. I'm going to defer it. Okay. I can tell you right now, I'm going to defer it. You might suggest to the developer that they contact me, but even then I'd still want to hear from you guys what the optimal conditions will be so that they don't denigrate the whole area around them.
Okay. And I will, we will reach out and also ask them give them your comments before they reach out to you, so they have some time to maybe get their thoughts
I mean, we
together.
can't blame them because there are no requirements.
Right.
So this, what I want to know, I guess, first is what would be you all's recommendations? I don't want people, there is no plan there. And so you can pretty well tear up the land fast before a plan comes. I don't want to do that because there's a shortage of land.
Okay.
All right. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So if I
think-
could get some idea of what optimal conditions would be that wouldn't mess up everything else, then I can at least have some sort of learned conversation with the applicants who will probably go berserk, but I don't care.
Okay, we'll provide those to you. I'll get with Brian and we'll review kind of plans or recommendations in the area and provide those to you. And then ask the applicant to contact you after you have those. We've been able to provide those to you. And understand it seems related to kind of the details of the operation, outdoor storage and how it impacts the Hunter Road and Hilltop areas. Okay. Okay, we will do that. Yes.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Burrs. Karen, there is contact information on that slide, I believe, Mr. Davis. We could reach out to, should be rather easy to find.
Oh, well, thank you.
We'll move on to seeing no other lights. Item J, please.
Okay, this is a request in the South Side area to rezone from R3 residential zone to the UGC urban general commercial zone. The proposed use is to match adjacent zones with about a half an acre. Just to orient you, South Broad is running northeast to southwest, 1 block over from this. That's the racetrack or raceway gas station there just to the west of the property. Much of this area was rezoned as part of the South Broad zoning study to the urban general commercial zone. This area is a little bit of a island in the UGC. Their property to the east was just rezoned not too long ago for a residential townhouse development. Property to the north was rezoned to UGC in 2016. And then this just notes that that gas station to the west received a special permit for that auto-oriented use. Again, this is the current use on the property is a church, and then the property behind them is just a vacant property. We're using the South Broad District Plan for the recommendations that was adopted in 2018, and the recommendation is mixed housing, medium intensity, and that is to provide a mixture of housing type, allowing buildings up to 3 stories, urban style development with parking to the side and rear. The proposal, staff found the proposal, the urban general UGC proposals compatible with the adopted land use plan, adjacent land uses and development form that is an extension of an existing zone. And there's quite a bit of precedent for that zone in the area. But in order to keep the residential intensity in line with the recommendations of the plan, staff recommended conditions to assist with that transition. And those conditions are residential and institutional uses only, a maximum building height of 3 stories. There was no opposition at Planning Commission. Planning Commission's findings were in line with staff as well as their recommendation to approve with those conditions.
Very good. Councilwoman Dotley, any questions or comments? Very good. Thank you for your comments. Karen, I think we have one other item for this afternoon, item K. And Councilman Byrd's district.
This is a request for rezoning, excuse me, let me go back one. Request rezoning from the URA3 urban residential attached zone to the UCX3 commercial mixed use zone. And you can tell we're in the form-based code area for this. The proposals for a multi-use building on a 0.13 acre tract. MLK is running is the southern frontage of this property just across from the park. The area shown in orange that the property's existing zone is the URA3. The area to the west, which is kind of a tannish shade, is the UCX3, which is what the applicant would like the rezoning to. The property was rezoned R4 as part of a zoning study, and then it was rezoned to the URA3 as part of the zoning study related to the form-based code. So the closest UCX3 zone is adjacent to the site and was also rezoned as part of that form-based code project. The MLK plan recommends a mixed residential uses with a diversity of density and types, and noted that the MLK Boulevard is a commercial corridor and encourages residential uses on the upper floors of buildings. The UCX3 zone requires parking to the rear, allows for a mix of uses including commercial and high-density residential, and has a two-story minimum building height, all of which are recommended in the plan. So staff's recommendation was approved that found that proposal is compatible with the plan, land uses and development form in the area, and also is an extension of an existing zone. So staff recommendations was to approve. There was no opposition at Planning Commission, and Planning Commission's findings and recommendation mirror those of staff with a recommendation to approve.
Very good. Councilman Byrd, any comments? No comments. Very good. Karen, great job.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your presentations. Chairman, any other business to come before the council? All right, we will adjourn till 6.
Thank you, Matthew.
These chairs aren't comfortable, though. I wish they.
No, close my neck.
You know what? I wish they would be there.
But it was like an airplane.
whole
or that's what they do.
Yeah. The whole section, actually, it's not even like that, though. It would be
Or like
cool
the
if we
ones like
replaced
we
all
had in
these with, like,
college.
where we could actually like